BIMMERPOST. It is an exciting day today for me because I'm here in Palm Springs, California, behind the wheel for the very first time of the F90 new BMW M5. And it is, well, okay, let's start from the beginning. I've been driving around all morning in the highways and deserted, beautiful back roads around Palm Springs. And right now I'm in efficient engine mode, comfort dampers, comfort steering, and it's very comfortable as you would expect an M5 to be. It's just like any other 5 Series. You can step on it. That was a kick down. I had to push the accelerator all the way to the ground past the spring, the detent spring, for a conventional automatic kick down. And it still takes a second or two to respond, but it wakes up and the beast is alive within. Now, it is a conventional automatic. That's one of the big changes for the new M5 versus the outgoing models. And you know, BMW has been a big proponent of DCT, dual clutch automated manual gearboxes for quite a few generations now. And now we have the new M5 back to a regular conventional automatic. And seemingly what's worse is there is no manual option. I'll get back to that in a second, but actually this automatic is lighter than the outgoing DCT. And automatics, I believe it's a ZF unit, has become so good that they can handle the additional torque that might make a DCT stumble. And so far as I can tell, in the fast shift modes, it's about as good as a DCT gets, really, compared to the M-DCTs and the M3, M4 that I drove recently in the M2. So I don't really see any downside to going back to conventional auto if the performance is just as good, and it is indeed as good. I've got a nice empty stretch of road here, so I'm actually gonna put it in. Okay, we've got 2 buttons here. We've got the M1 and the M2, and these are just basically memory settings, and you can configure them each individually using the setup button. There's a setup button here on the console, and you can use the iDrive controller, the rotary dial, to configure each of the settings for suspension, engine, steering weight, and of course your 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive options. So this is now the first 4-wheel drive M5, but I've got a big stretch of road here, so let's put in M1, which is all-wheel drive sport. I'm going to drop down a couple years with my pedals. We're about 3,000 RPM. Oh my God, this is sensational. Wow. Okay, I'm going to come to a full stop. Let's feel that again. This is with all-wheel drive traction, so we're in all-wheel drive MDM 4-wheel drive sport. I don't know if there's a launch control, but I'm just going to hold it on the brake around. Oh, didn't shift fast enough there. Oh, 4.4 liter twin turbo V8. And I love the V8 rumble. I haven't heard a V8 rumble in so long that I've forgotten how much I like it. We've got so many turbocharged 4s and turbocharged 6s now. Even though I love BMW's inline 6s, there's nothing for me that really beats a big BMW V8. Wow, listen to that burble. We often talk about whether cars have character or engines have character, and this engine is just bursting with personality. This is one charming engine. We haven't even got to the first corner, and I am all smiles. And the heads-up display, I'm not sure if the camera can catch it, but it's super clear. I'm in the M view mode. I've got my revs and the gear indicator and miles to destination, the speed limit, and my present speed. So, a bit about the 4-wheel drive system. Right now I'm in 4-wheel drive with the 4-wheel drive sport, and that means it's more rear bias. It should feel more like a rear-wheel driven car. On a car with this much power, one of my first questions is there any corruption in the steering feel? Is there any negative steering feedback that comes out, especially mid-corner when you're loaded up and you get on the throttle? And the happy answer is that there is none. I have not felt any tugging, any subtle torque steery kind of characteristics coming from the helm when I get on the gas mid-corner. So that's really good news. And BMW has always been very good with their four-wheel drive tuning. It's always been a X-Drive variable front-rear torque split. It's an active system where it judges with steering angle and stability control and all of the various sensors in the drivetrain how much power to proportion between front and rear. Of course, it's also got an electronically controlled rear LSD. So back to the original question, is it a detriment to have four-wheel drive in a puristic M product like the M3, M2, M5 now? And I don't think it's a detriment. We're approaching 600 horsepower. I believe we're at 594 for this, about 550 foot-pounds of torque. And it does have a two-wheel drive mode, which I have set here on the M2 dial. In order to have two-wheel drive mode, you need to have DSC turned off. So it sounds like two-wheel drive is kind of a hooligan, burnout, slidey mode for those of us who are into that kind of thing. But I've been driving around in two-wheel drive with DSC off, just enthusiastically, but nothing crazy, and I think it's perfectly stable. There's nothing particularly worrisome about being in two-wheel drive on the open road. Okay, I'm going to try and turn around here. So I've just accelerated hard through the gears in two-wheel drive mode, DSC off, and the M5 is just as, well, not quite as stable. There was a little bit rear end wiggle happening, but nothing alarming in the two-wheel drive mode. But it does feel a little bit more exciting. There is a bit of tail wiggle. I do feel a little bit more of that rotation, that rear slip angle as you push the throttle through the corner there. It's not just a hooligan mode. I think this says something about BMW's current philosophy. They want you to remember the M5s of old. My father had an E39 M5, which I spent some time driving as a young adult, and I have very fond memories of that car. That burbling V8, the manual transmission, that sort of driver engagement and involvement. You know, when the F80 came out, some of that was lost, especially in the F80 M3. When I first drove the very first F80 M3s, I was a little bit disappointed because even though it was very fast, torquey, capable, all the technical specs were spot on, it wasn't very engaging. The steering lost a lot of that feedback, the pitter-pattery, textural feedback that you get from the steering wheel. And we lost a lot of that nuance in the chassis, a lot of involvement that made the car wiggly and fun as you drive more enthusiastically. All of that came rushing back, starting with the M2 a couple years ago, and especially so last year when I drove the M Performance Parts M3 competition cars at COTA. If you recall the videos I did on those, I found that they were so much more engaging, and they had kind of, you know, if this was Porsche, they kind of GT-ified the M3, and all that feedback came rushing in. And this M5 today I'm driving gives me that same sort of feeling from the steering and chassis. I feel very involved. No, it's not hardcore and firm like the M Performance BMWs. It's got a longer wheelbase. It's an M5, and M5s have traditionally always been all about the compliance and comfort. It's always been the transporter of the BMW M line, and this car feels that, but it also has that engagement and excitement that I have to admit was rather missing from the F10, the previous generation M5. That one car, like the original F80 M3, was a little bit synthetic, a little bit electronic. So we've got a transition from BMWs going from the analog to the electronic age, and now we've gone kind of electronic age BMWs going back to having that driver engagement and involvement again. It tells you this is a company that cares about guys like you and I. We like that feel. We're always on about the steering feel, the chassis feel, the engagement, involvement, feeling like part of the experience and not just an autonomous emergency co-pilot in the event of autonomous failure. So, wow. Okay, this is going to be a little bit childish, but there's nobody around. So I'm going to do another standing start. I'm just going to hold it on the brake. We're at about 1500 RPM, full throttle. The rear tires were skipping about a little bit. but no traction issues. Surprisingly, I am in M2 two-wheel drive mode. Surprisingly, I thought we'd get a little bit more wheel spin in pure two-wheel drive mode. Let's try that again. Okay, no one behind me. I'm going to put it back onto M1, which I have preset as MDM Sport, okay? Holding on the brake, full throttle. Just a little bit less wheel spin and shuddering from the tires in four-wheel drive sport mode. So there is a traction advantage off the line. In these kind of ideal dry conditions, not as much difference as I would have expected. But I imagine in the rain, which I'm not gonna get today, but imagine in the rain it would make a bit more difference. So there you have it. I'm just gonna enjoy the rest of this road in MDM Sport mode in four-wheel drive. And later on this afternoon, I'm going to take you along for some laps of the Thermal Driving Club. It's a private facility, but BMW does have a performance driving center in it, Performance Driving Center West. And all of you actually can sign up for performance driving schools through a BMW to drive some of the hottest BMWs around Thermal. So pretty good perk, considering that Thermal is normally a private facility and you have to be a member. Coming around a blind corner here, lots of gravel around. I'm in all-wheel drive sport. You know, I have to say, if you can see, I'm lurching about a little bit when I get on the brakes. My one criticism so far is that the brakes are really quite touchy. They are a little too touchy for me. It doesn't have that sort of reassuring, firm initial travel, where there's very little initial travel and it's a firm pressure. You could modulate by pressure. It doesn't quite have that. It's quite sensitive. These are the ceramic brakes. I've never had any problem with the functionality in terms of performance of the BMW ceramics. Oh, this is a bad road. So going through that corner there, I did feel the front end scrabble for grip a little, and I can feel that right through the steering, which indicates very good feedback. And I don't feel any corruption in the steering at all. In fact, I don't really feel the front tires pulling you away. You know, in conventional four-wheel drive cars, or rather, most four-wheel drive cars, whether it be a Subaru STI or even a Focus RS with its fancy advanced torque vectoring, when you do that mid-corner and mash on the throttle, you do feel a lot of front tire engagement. In this car, I actually don't feel a lot of that. It feels very natural. In fact, it retains a lot of its rear-wheel drive characteristics, which is, of course, the intention. Just confirming it with experience here today. Fantastic interior, layout's awesome. It's got this slight tilt. The controls and the center stack has a slight tilt towards the driver, which is very driver-centric in traditional BMW fashion, something that I like. Beautiful LCD, fully digital instrument clusters with a couple of accent rings around the dials. Very nice indeed. The seats are very comfortable. They've got the right amount of padding for obviously comfort. It's not as firm as I would like from a pure sports seat. The bolsters, as always, I wish they could go even tighter. They are adjustable, inflatable side bolsters, but for my slim frame, I'm still moving around a little bit more. Bucket seats, they are not. But to rack on the miles, and surely M5 is a perfect car to rack on the road miles in. These are a great pair of thrones. Very good. This has been a really fun, satisfying road morning test of the M5. And I'm going to be on the track shortly, and I'll tell you all about it at the track. But so far, it's not just good, it is sensational. It is fantastic. I'm gonna put it back to, okay, I'm just gonna hit the M1 again and again, and now I'm back to efficient engine, comfort dampers, comfort steering. I'm just gonna waft my way back to Thermal Driving Club. Hope you enjoyed this ride along with me this morning on the M5. be back in a second for the track portion of my review.